Good morning, everyone. I'm Kim Gusby.
And I'm Ben Katko. Thank you for joining us for Veterans Voices, a celebration of the men and women who serve. One service member this community won't soon forget is Captain Matthew Freeman.
10 years ago, he was killed in Afghanistan. The Bryan County native was just 29 years old.
News 3's Claire Going spoke with Captain Freeman's mother about the foundation she created in his name.
His last words to me were, "Mom, can you get pens and paper over here? They'd rather have that than food and water."
Only 2 days after Captain Matthew Freeman said those words to his mother, Lisa, he was killed in action in Afghanistan. Now, she describes why she began the foundation in her son's name, the Matthew Freeman Project. One of the project's initiatives, Pens and Paper for Peace, collected 16,000 pounds of school supplies in the past 5 years that were given to soldiers and Marines who were able to give them directly to children in Afghanistan.
Some of my favorite memories are actually seeing the pictures of the soldiers giving these to these children and the smiles on those faces.
Lisa's 2 daughters put their education on hold at the time of their brother's death. Lisa calls siblings the forgotten mourners, which sparked the idea to create a scholarship fund for siblings of fallen soldiers. The project has provided 9 scholarships so far.
How many times my daughters told me that people came up and said, "How's your mom? How's your sister-in-law?" And they didn't ask about them. And yet they're the ones who I think, when I look around, probably suffered the most. They missed that older brother terribly.
Another one of the project's initiatives, called Matthew Bears, creates bears for families out of fallen soldiers' uniforms. At one point, Lisa received over 1,000 emails asking for Matthew Bears. Half of the emails were from seamstresses all over the world asking if they could help sew. The Matthew Freeman Project has made over 700 bears for families who lost loved ones, including from combat-related suicides.
I was so afraid of losing that connection that Matt still could make with so many people, and what God's shown me is that, in fact, it touched probably many more than he ever would have if he had maybe been able to still be with us.
In 2009, Captain Freeman married his high school sweetheart, Teresa Hess. 3 weeks later, he volunteered for ground action when he heard the Marines needed more forces. September marks the 10-year anniversary of Matthew's death when he was just 29 years old.
He was just a fun kid to raise because there was never a dull moment. He was always involved in something, and president of the school, and his wife was the vice president of the school. They were good friends, and sadly they had only been married a month when he was killed.
At the end of Captain Matthew Freeman Drive in Richmond Hill sits a memorial dedicated to Matthew in the Bryan County building, so his legacy can live on.
I love it because there's a podium there with a little book that people can write in, and when I go in there to pay my taxes or get license plates or whatever, I stop and read the comments, and I love hearing from past soldiers and Marines, or just people that knew him growing up, and all, "We miss you, Matthew," or "Semper Fi," or whatever it is. The comments are very uplifting.
Matthew's last journal entry is under glass in the memorial, a special yet heartbreaking discovery for his mother.
I didn't let myself read it for about 2 or 3 years. His wife sent it to us, but I couldn't bear the thought of it because it started out, "Mom, Dad, you made me the man I am today. Tell the girls I love them," and couldn't be a prouder older brother. But he goes on to talk about, "I do this for my family so they need not fear, or my country so it can be a beacon of light for the entire world, and for myself so that I might know the measure of myself and not be found wanting." It was like a gift to let me know that he was stable and sure of who he was.
It's not hard to tell from the hundreds of loving comments in the memorial book how special of a person Matthew was.
Even when you talk to the men that were with him on the ground, they just loved him because he put them first, made them feel important. And that's just kind of the way he was. And I think one of my favorite things about him was his laughter. He had the best chuckle and laughter of anybody I know.
Lisa says she's thankful she created the Matthew Freeman Project because it got her through the hard times.
It has probably been one of the most meaningful things I've been able to do in my lifetime, and I can see my son smiling down and being very proud.
A team of former Navy SEALs is raising money for physically disabled veterans and children by cycling down the East Coast.
They say the 1,000-mile ride is nothing compared to what the patients in rehab are going through.
We're going to ride 1,000 miles, come hell or high water.
5 retired Navy SEALs are making an 11-day journey down the East Coast to raise money for VIP, a nonprofit center for disabled military, veterans, and children with neuromuscular injuries. They call themselves Beyond the Teams, and they've been friends since they graduated Navy SEAL training together more than 40 years ago. One of the team's founders, Mike Charbonnet, served for 20 years. He says the 1,000-mile bike ride is nothing compared to what they've been through during their service.
You see things and you do things that are hard to forget. You have hard things happen to people that you care about.
Charbonnet's son, David, also served as a SEAL. After he broke his spine in a parachuting accident, he received outpatient therapy at the VIP Neurorehabilitation Clinic in San Diego.
He's, doing all the things that a young SEAL team guy does, and then the next thing you know, he wakes up in a hospital and he's paralyzed. He had to overcome a challenge 1,000 times bigger than anyone I ever faced.
That's when Charbonnet got the idea to raise funds for the clinic by cycling from Virginia Beach to Fort Pierce, Florida.
The people that we're riding to support would love to be riding a bicycle right now. They would give almost anything. So, are there 1,000 good reasons not to do this? Yes. But there's a couple of really compelling good reasons to do this, and that outweighs all of the negative stuff.
The donations collected during the ride will provide VIP with specialized equipment for those who have difficulty moving due to stroke, multiple sclerosis, brain injuries, cerebral palsy, and spinal cord injuries. Beyond the Teams has raised over $60,000 so far. Charbonnet says with more than half of the trip completed, they feel confident about finishing their mission strong.
1,000 miles. What could possibly go wrong?
Reporting in Savannah, Claire Going, WSAV News 3.
Still ahead, military officials say the suicide rate among former service members is alarming.
When we come back, how a new organization is working to bring attention to the issue.
Stay with us. You're watching Veterans Voices on WSAV.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. A former Navy SEAL from Virginia Beach is involved in a new organization that wants to reduce military suicides.
It's called Shot at Dawn and includes a handful of former military members, medical professionals, and veterans advocates. Chris Horn from our sister station Wavy takes a closer look.
We have some pretty bad suicide rates in this country. They've been bad for a while. Some stats say 15 up to 22 a day.
A SEAL for 11 years, Muddy Heath knows what it's like to lose military members to suicide.
But I think we collectively could have done better, and there were red flags that went unnoticed.
So Heath is part of Shot at Dawn, which aims to reduce military suicide by finding those red flags. They've designed a questionnaire for commanding officers. It probes 8 different triggers for suicide, including any brain injury, sexual assault, substance abuse, and legal problems, among others.
If more and more commanders understand the precursors and these layers, I think we can start to make a dent and hopefully mitigate these deaths, these suicides.
The initiative comes at a time when suicides in the military are on the rise. They jumped nearly 6% from 2017 to 2018. 3 Navy members from the same ship, the USS George H.W. Bush based at Norfolk, who took their own lives in the same week. Shot at Dawn wants to attack the problem of active duty suicides like those, and that would lead to lower suicide rates among veterans too.
Let's get them early. Let's start documenting baseline and how they're looking early, how their mental health looks early, so we don't have these humongous problems in the VA that we have now.
Here in the Coastal Empire, one organization is connecting military families with service or companion dogs.
It's an effort to save shelter animals and help service members in need. Companions for Heroes is based in Brunswick, but does a lot of work in Savannah as well.
A service or companion dog can cost up to $5,000, but this nonprofit charity gives them to people in need for free.
We've put together a list of resources available for veterans. If you'd like to check them out, go to WSAV.com/veteransvoices. Some local veterans are getting help getting back on their feet.
We have a closer look at how they're settling into a community built just for them.
Stick around. You're watching Veterans Voices on WSAV.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. Homeless veterans are getting the support they need thanks to a new community built just for them.
WSAV's digital reporter Claire Going has a closer look into the Tiny House Project.
Kenneth McNeil served in the Army National Guard for 24 years. He says once he finished his service, it was difficult for him to find a job with his disability, which left him homeless. Now, he's been living in his tiny house for 4 months.
She told me the tiny house. I said, well, God, that's really good, you know, because I was just looking to move anywhere, just to be, you know, have a place to stay.
23 miniature homes are situated on Dundee Street in Savannah. This community is built exclusively for homeless veterans. The project is the first of its kind in Georgia. According to the Chatham-Savannah Homeless Authority, there are roughly 280 veterans with no place to live long-term in Savannah. Executive Director Cindy Murphy-Kelly says the Tiny House Project is the most cost-effective way to serve a population that is likely to end up in unregulated camps or on the streets.
PTSD, brain trauma, or substance abuse or mental health, they drop out a little bit, and then life falls apart, and then they end up in our homeless numbers, which is unfortunate.
The Authority for the Homeless recently completed phase 1 of the project, which housed 12 veterans in July. 11 more veterans will be moving into tiny homes in the coming week. Eventually, there will be 27 tiny homes available for veterans in need, equipped with full kitchens, bathrooms, and a bedroom, all within 26 square feet.
I know I can always come home now. You know, that's the biggest issue. And I can afford to pay the bills. I'm not worried about how I'm going to eat. I got everything that everybody has in their house. It's just tiny. And that's perfect. So at the end of the day, that's what matters.
Reporting in Savannah, Claire Going, WSAV News 3.
A national organization is in Savannah to give a local veteran the gift of a lifetime.
Building Homes for Heroes renovated the house for the veteran and his wife. News 3's Alex Borzarjian has more from the emotional ceremony.
Remember, lock up before you leave, okay?
Thanks, boss.
You're welcome.
It's really just been a journey to try to find where we belong and a sense of home.
Welcome home!
Finally, Daniel Geyer and his wife Crystal can stop searching.
And here's your brand new kitchen.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
National nonprofit Building Homes for Heroes modified the property just for the Geyers. Since 2006, they've gifted nearly 200 mortgage-free homes to military families in need.
It's very rewarding. It's, you know, to be able to relieve a financial burden for them is an amazing feeling to be able to do and give them, and it opens up so many more doors that they wouldn't have otherwise.
In 2007, Geyer was severely wounded while fighting overseas. He suffers from PTSD, a traumatic brain injury, nerve damage, and chronic pain.
We've been stuck for so long and trying to figure out a purpose and something to do and something to give him hope for and, you know, a reason to live. And this is definitely there.
For his heroics in combat, Geyer was awarded the Silver Star Medal, Purple Heart, and many other accolades. Still, he says his brand new home means more.
I don't think for us it was moving into a new home. I think for us it was changing our lives and moving forward into a future.
Alex Borzarjian, WSAV News 3.
Just ahead, a museum is telling military stories from every era.
Find out how it's now helping veterans connect with one another.
You're watching Veterans Voices on WSAV.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. For more than a decade, the Miami Valley Military History Museum has showcased artifacts from the defining moments in our nation's history.
While the museum is on the Veterans Affairs campus, it's independent of the VA.
Adam Reif from our sister station WDTN takes us inside.
Daddy was killed in 1969 on his second voluntary tour in Vietnam.
The Miami Valley Military History Museum is personal for Kathy Beers Conrad, an Air Force veteran and Gold Star daughter, and she hopes it becomes personal for anyone who walks through the doors.
We're obligated to listen to each other, to support each other in any way that's needed.
Many of the museum's 15,000 artifacts are uniforms from every era, each with a story that deserves to be heard.
We've had family members tell us that, you know, Dad or Grandpa never talked about the war, but we when he sees something that he used or wore, it really opens a lot of them up and they start sharing those memories.
Veterans volunteer at the museum for a variety of reasons. Some are eager to teach, some need the connection to others like them. Army veteran Aaron Anderson deployed to Iraq shortly after 9/11. His eventual transition to civilian life was not easy, but the museum helps him connect with others with similar experiences. One of Aaron's service uniforms hangs in the museum, but it's not his favorite display. Vietnam veterans have his highest respect.
I attribute a lot of the successes that we had in current conflicts to the Vietnam veterans. We learned those lessons.
John Holscher is one of those Vietnam-era veterans. He didn't serve in country, but that didn't matter to the people who mistreated him when he returned.
Baby killer, the whole 9 yards. And I'm sorry. It hurts. But I'm glad the kids today are thought of better than we were.
The mission to teach and grow continues at the Miami Valley Military History Museum.
We know whose shoulders we stand on, all of us.
A veteran relives history through a piece of clothing.
Find out how this jacket connected him back to his time in war.
You're watching Veterans Voices on WSAV.
Welcome back. A World War II veteran is finally reunited with a piece of his past.
95-year-old Kenny Gaines has been missing a specially made Army Air Corps jacket.
As Joy Bettenhausen from our sister station KSN reports, it played a huge role in his life.
And the jacket is part of my life.
And it's a piece of history 95-year-old Kenny Gaines has been missing for the last couple years. Kenny was drafted in the Army Air Corps at 18 years old back in 1943. During World War II, Kenny was accepted into the pilot training program after passing the test.
About 35 of us went and took the test, and only 2 passed it, and I was one of them. Accidental, just a good test taker, I think. So I was out of there in 2 days.
Kenny thought he would fly C-47s, but instead he went to Whitman Air Force Base under the command of General Henry Arnold. General Arnold took it upon himself to have jackets made for his crew that would look nicer than the regular Army uniform.
He got $300 out of the government for our uniforms. And that included being tailor-made.
The jacket became a big part of Kenny's past and soon after became a big part of his family. Kenny's brother-in-law became a second lieutenant in the ROTC and called Kenny up for a favor when he needed a jacket too.
They're not going to buy my uniform, I'm going to have to buy it myself. And I expect it was over $300 even at that, because times had changed even in 10 years, you know. And so he said, "You still got that jacket?" I said, "Yeah, it's here in the closet." He said, "Could I try it on?" He came out and it fit perfectly.
So that jacket traveled from World War II with Kenny to the Korean and Vietnam Wars with his brother-in-law. But when Kenny bought a 1935 home in Mount Vernon back in 2002, it didn't have any closets, and there was nowhere to store his prized possession. A few racks in the grain bin in the barn on his property did the trick to store the jacket, his clothes, and other items. But they were forgotten when Kenny recently moved to the Missouri Veterans Home. Thankfully, his house's new owner, Matt Olschlager, visits Kenny often, and Kenny had a question for him about a month ago.
And so we talked, and so when he left, I said, "Matt, by the way, if you check that out and find that jacket, it sure would be nice." In 30 minutes, he was back with this jacket. He didn't even know that bunch of clothes was back there.
The proud men and women of our military work hard to secure our freedom.
Thank you for joining us for this celebration of those who have and continue to serve.